Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Sanchez from But Why Though, a Geek Community, and I'm really excited to talk to y'all. And you can probably see the Gojo back there. My first question is going to be, how does it feel for y'all to both play characters that people are very thirsty for? I'm asking for other people, not myself, I promise.
We actually just had a conversation about who you should date between the two characters. We had a huge go, and it's my suggestion that everyone date Suguru, not Gojo. Gojo's not. You don't bring Gojo home to your parents. You know, you don't even introduce Gojo to your friends. You have a fling with him on the weekend, and then you bring Suguru to your parents.
I would say Suguru does seem like a ride or die. Like, yeah. Once you take him home,
right? Yeah.
He could just change his attitude a little bit.
Yeah, just get him some therapy.
It may be right or kill for a little bit, but we'll get to the.
But look at that guy. He definitely pulls the chair out for his date. You know, he definitely does that. Yeah.
He's well-mannered for sure. Yeah. I think that was a big part of his story, actually.
Yeah. Well-spoken, well-mannered. Gojo would take both seats for himself. It'd be a terrible time.
But so on this point, which is a great segue, Gojo and Suguru are very different from each other, like really polar opposites. And I have the benefit of having read all the manga, so I'm so excited for the future. But being contained here, we get to see a lot of that dynamic build separate from seeing you two on screen together. Are you, when you're voice acting and when you're kind of building these characters out, when you all do get a chance to be together, are you thinking about what the other characters have done before, or I'm assuming what's coming in the future? How do you kind of build that out? Because to be honest, and no spoilers, but the finale with you two actually made me really deeply sad. And like, I felt so much emotion. So like, what is it like to build that dynamic? And I'm assuming you all kind of record by yourselves. So how do you build that? Sorry if that was a long question.
That's a good question.
You want to go, KG, or you want me
to? You, please.
Okay, great. I think what's really nice is that the writers on the film were great about making it easy to develop that. You know, in the flashbacks, you could see how close their friendship was and how they both valued each other's opinions, and they would, bounce ideas off of each other. And, they didn't always agree, but they were always willing to like talk through things together. And so that in itself creates the foundation of like, that they have a love for each other, and they were best friends, like literally best friends. And probably deep down inside, even through all the activities that happened in this movie, they probably felt like they were facing their best friends still. And so I think that's kind of, in certain scenes that do happen, what make you emotionally connected to them, because you sense that they already have that history together.
Yeah. I always it takes a lot for anyone to bring Gojo out of that weird, like funny, wacky space he inhabits as a default. And Suguru definitely is one of those people. Whenever he's mentioned in this film, Gojo just sort of comes down into this very serious, very withdrawn place, because that's his best friend. You could say ex-best friend, but Lex is right. In their hearts, probably they have this fondness for each other that is very difficult to break. And I'm sure it's heartbreaking for both sides to see the other standing across from them, opposite instead of parallel. I can only speak for Gojo because I've inhabited him for a little bit, but in my view, Gojo is just a very lonely person. He outright says that Suguru is basically his only friend, his best friend, his only friend. And that of course has to do with the fact that he was born under these crazy circumstances, like he's got all this wild abilities, and that sets him so far apart from regular people that he has such a hard time connecting as a human with people. So having Suguru, having a person there that he could just be friends with, was so important to him. And when that was taken away, it was rough, So yeah, their relationship is one of the most tragic things about JJK.
Yeah, and it's one of those tragic, and of course, in typical manga reader fashion, one of my favorite things, because we like pain. Yes. Or anime fan, we like pain. Going off of that too, one of the things I wanted to ask for Suguru especially is we get to see like a lot of different sides to him in the film. Like you have like the air that he puts on when he's meeting people because it's what he has to do to get money. You have what he looks like once he just drops that veneer and it's like, yeah, no, you're nasty. Go. And then you have the really emotional piece at, for his end part where you find out that like he is kind of a broken man in a way. Like he doesn't know how to, like, he justifies his hatred towards humans, but he's never hated sorcerers, and that like love and hate piece. How do you like voice that so perfectly in each of those pieces? Because there's a whole story just going with Suguru himself.
Yeah, it's a very complex character, and I think that I've mentioned this a couple times today, but I think that as opposed to him being a villain, he's really just a sorcerer who is flawed, and he's had some great disappointments in his life, and his ideology has been crushed in his life, and so he's had to take this standpoint where he's trying to basically think of what his next steps are, and part of that is creating this ideology of like the next stage of evolution for humanity, and he has to get behind it because that's all he knows how to do is get behind what he's feeling. And so that takes him on the whole circle, from being kind to being fake to being guarded to having lost faith, having gained faith, and all the evil that comes with what he's decided to live his life like. So it's great because the story provides so much of that all I have to do is be there for the story, and the character unfolds in that way. So I really give credit to the writers and the animators and the director of the animation, because it's so beautifully done that all I have to do is be there and be present as an actor for that character, and be willing to be vulnerable enough to show his flaws and all those things that are ugly about him. And then those stand apart, depending on what scene you're looking at, and it comes off as a good performance.
And for Gojo, one of my favorite things about him is how quickly he goes from like pure chaos demon for the most part to like just intimidating, like just extremely like you don't want to deal with this. Like, I think it's Nanami or who says like, oh no, he's lost it or something like that once he starts his fight with Miguel. How do you switch that? Because with Gojo, it seems like there's less of an arc and more of a on off, and it's all the same person. How do you do that?
I have to keep in mind that every character, every sorcerer in the lore is messed up in one way or another. That's almost canonical, I'm pretty sure, because of the nature of cursed energy, right? Wielders of said cursed energy are a little right? So, and of course Gojo, having an abundance of such, does have his own little quirks, and being raised in such an isolationist way, being raised without friends, without anyone he even really considered his peers, right? That does something to a person. That absolutely inhibits a certain part of growth in a person's brain. And I try to keep that in mind when I have Gojo interacting with people. Aside from Suguru and like a couple of other people, he really doesn't see anyone as his equal. Most people are just ants to him. So when he does turn that switch, like you said, it's like, oh, I have to crush some ants now. It is that scary little switch. You're so used to seeing him be this, kind of wacky teacher figure, this mentor figure to all these kids who he really cares about, which speaks to his heart in a way where it's like, okay, he's not this irredeemable sociopath, at least he really does care for these kids and he wants the best for them. But he's not exactly someone you want to run to in a dark alley on a bad day.
No, no, not at all. Especially if he's taken off that blindfold.
It's generally not good news.
And I think and this will be my last question, I think one of the things that kind of coming from both y'all's answers that really interests me is when we talk about the care that these characters have for their respective families or students. In a way, it is something that is really special to them. Like, they are men who are flawed, but Suguru cares for the people that he's putting in harm's way in the same way that Gojo does. So when it comes to kind of like fleshing out who the character is when you bring them to screen, how do you keep all of that care, especially for like Suguru, while also embodying all of that, like, I guess violence is the best word, like when we actually look at someone like that? How do you kind of keep that in your mind while you're also trying to embody the bad?
Well, it's kind of like it's his heart, that heart that cares is always there, but he's got so many layers of guarded Suguru that he's got that bitterness that is like a layer on top of it. And so what happens is when he sees his fellow curse users working together and supporting each other, his heart breaks through and he's moved by their care for each other. But as soon as that moment passes, all those guarded walls come back up and he goes back to being ruthless. And so that's basically the way I approach it, is that he's always got the heart, but it's just covered in so many layers of pain that you rarely get to see it, but it does emerge.
Yeah. And for Satoru, he says over and over again, it's a thing he loves saying, that was it like, no one should be allowed to take youth away from the young.
Yeah.
And he says it enough that me as an actor says in my brain, it's like, okay, that comes from somewhere and something happened to him and it's really important to him. Even though he was raised in this kind of like sociopathic way, something happened to him in his life where specifically taking care of these kids is of the utmost importance, and a genuine importance, not an artificial one. So as long as I'm open to that and I react earnestly to that emotion, it comes out and it plays with the dangerous side of him pretty nicely. It makes him a more complete human being, I think. Like you come across characters who are very one-dimensional all the time. It's like, I'm a scary guy and I'm just a scary guy. It's really nice to see multifaceted angles of a character, even if they are summoning demons and like murdering sorcerers. It's really nice to see just somewhat relatable bits to these absolute monsters, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have. Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great rest of your night. Thank y'all.
You were great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.